Video number 100 from MythoReligio series, Book 4. The Lost Paradise of Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. Part 3. In the Americas, Turkey, Africa, or Antarctica? Dear fellow truth seekers, in video number 98, I have shared the background information concerning how the Western world heard about the sunken paradise of Atlantis, an island that submerged in the middle of the ocean due to the anger of the gods. Many people have been obsessed trying to prove that this legendary place really existed, and many locations in the world have been proposed for its location. In video number 99, I have shared the proposed location of Atlantis in several areas in Europe. And in this video, I will continue sharing other proposed locations outside of Europe, namely in the Americas, Turkey, Africa, and Antarctica. The Andes, Bolivia. A hypothesis by the Scot cartographer Jim Allen argues that Plato's description exactly fits Bolivia. Modern satellite mapping shows the plain, now called the Altiplano, to be of rectangular configuration, perfectly level, and closed on all sides by mountains, and these mountains contain the metals which Plato told us about, namely gold, silver, copper, tin, and the mysterious orichalcum, probably an alloy of gold and copper, which can be found in the Andes, and which Plato said were used to plate the walls of the circular city. The words atoll and Antis are themselves of Native American origin, meaning water and copper, respectively, and the plain is subject to earthquakes and floods, such as Plato said sank the city in a single day and night of rainfall. Question: how can Atlantis be in the Andes when it is supposed to have sunk into the ocean? Jim Allen responded that according to Plato, Atlantis was on a level plain which was high above the level of the sea and surrounded by mountains. Yet the city was on a level plain and only 5 miles or 72 kilometers from the sea and connected to the sea by a canal. The only way the city can be on a level plain and 5 miles from the sea and yet at the same time high above the level of the sea is if there are in fact two seas. That is here, the ocean sea enclosing the island continent and the inland sea adjacent to the city. So, the canal which Plato said took ships from the sea to the city was not a canal from the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, but a canal from the nearby lake, which is so huge that it is in fact an inland sea called Lake Pupo, which in turn is connected to another vast inland sea called Lake Titicaca to the north. In fact, the entire plain has been periodically submerged beneath the sea. It became a giant inland sea at various dates, going back thousands of years, succeeded by dry periods. So, Jim Allen lays great emphasis on the topography of the area compared to the description in Plato's dialogues. When he compared the physical features described by Plato with the site on the Altiplano, he found that there was a very close match, except that all the dimensions were out by a factor of 2. He explains this by pointing out that unlike the Greeks, the pre-Columbian South Americans use a base 20 for counting. Allen claims that Quillagas, located 300 kilometers or 186 miles south of La Paz, was the center of Atlantis. He claims that there are at least 50 similarities between Quillagas and Plato's Atlantis. For example, the present village of Quillagas, that was founded on 20 May 1501, but large blocks of stone found beneath the present houses suggest a much earlier settlement on the site. The village has beautiful interior of the colonial church with stonework picked out in red, black, and white, the colors of Atlantis. Mexico. Author Gene Matlock claims that he found Atlantis in Mexico. He claims in the last Atlantis book you'll ever have to read that the Sanskrit language spoken in the Indian subcontinent is the progenitor of most world languages, that this explains the meaning of the name Atlantis, and that this suggests a connection between Mexico and India and a Mexican location for Atlantis. Matlock says, there was not just one Atlantis in ancient Mexico, but many Atlantises. All of them were and still are in Mexico. But one of them once sank under the waters of the Caribbean Ocean just off the coast of southern Veracruz and Yucatan. Clearly, the fact that many Mexican place names began with Atl has prompted a number of researchers to assume a connection with Atlantis. Central America, Bahama Bank Caribbean. Many geologists deny the possibility of a sunken island in Central America. However, after the Charles Berlitz's book The Mystery of Atlantis, Canadian-Hungarian geologist topographer's book was published entitled Atlantis, the Seven Seals. The author, Z.A. Simon, called the attention to these controversies. The June 1981 edition of Marine Geology shows some radiocarbon dates on mangrove peat between 5590 and 3680 BCE, with connection of the gradual sinking of the Florida Bimini region. Furthermore, near Andros Island, underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau found a huge submerged cave 165 feet or 50 meters beneath the surface. There are stalactites and stalagmites in it that can be formed in the open air only. Marine sediments on the walls of the grotto enabled scientists to estimate its submersion around or after 10,000 BCE. The seafloor on the northern side of Cuba, Haiti, and Puerto Rico indicates a definite system of submerged valleys of ancient rivers combined with sunken mountain ranges. The tongue of the ocean at Andros Island is undoubtedly an underwater ravine caused by terrible tectonic forces, surrounded by almost vertical walls as a memento of the catastrophe. The main problem with this theory is that Atlantis was supposed to have been submerged rapidly following an earthquake. More recently, other ruins have been found around Andros Island, including a large platform of massive, rectangular limestone blocks similar to the Bimini Road and underwater 0.8 kilometer linear rectangular rock formation near North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. The ruins seem to represent artificial remains dating back several thousands of years. If the melting of Ice Age glaciers is responsible for the present depth of the ruins, they should date back at least 7,500 years. Troy, Hisarlik, Turkey. Troy is a ruined ancient city that is generally accepted by modern scholars to have been situated at Hisarlik in what is now northwest Turkey. Archaeological study done by a university in Turkey gives the origins of this famous city to around 3500 BCE. The first person we know of who suggested Troy as Atlantis was Strabo, a Greek geographer, philosopher, and historian born at 64 BCE. In 1992, the Swiss geoarchaeologist Eberhard Zenger also proposed the hypothesis that Atlantis was in fact the city-state of Troy. He proposed that Plato's story of Atlantis was a retelling of the Trojan War. The problem with this theory is that Troy would have been well known to Plato, so why did he not simply name them? Furthermore, Plato tells us that the Atlanteans had control of the Mediterranean as far as Libya and Tyrrhenia, which is not a claim that can be made for the Trojans. What about the elephants, the 2 crops a year, or in the scenario, where were the pillars of Heracles? Zenger contends that the original Atlantis story contains many words that have been critically mistranslated. The Bronze Age Atlantis of Plato matches the Bronze Age Troy. He points out that Plato's reference to Atlantis as an island is misleading, since at the time in Egypt where the story originated, they frequently referred to any foreign land as an island. Rather strangely, Zenger admits that Troy does not match the description of Atlantis in terms of date, location, size, and island character. And even stranger still, several researchers or authors keep on coming with theories in support of this Troy-Atlantis connection, while some others are debunking it. Morocco, African Northwest. Morocco was known in ancient times as Marussia and Mauritania, and mentioned by both the ancient Greek historians Herodotus and Strabo. Herodotus referred to the inhabitants as Atlantis. According to Michael Hübner, Atlantis' core region was located in southwest Morocco at the Atlantic Ocean. In his papers, an approach to the analysis of Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, is described by means of a hierarchical constraint satisfaction procedure. A variety of geographically relevant indications from Plato's accounts are used to infer the most probable location of Plato's Atlantis Nessus. The outcome of this is the Sumasa Plain in today's southwest Morocco. This plain is surrounded by the High Atlas, the Anti-Atlas, and the Sea of Atlas, Atlantis Thalassa, today's Atlantic Ocean. Because of this isolated position, Hübner argued this plain was called Atlantis Nessos, the island of Atlas by ancient Greeks before the Greek Dark Ages. However, there is another problem, at least. Not only this plain is not an island, let alone outside Gibraltar, not only there is not sea full of impassable mud around it, but also the plain is too great for a city, too high above sea level, 400 meters or 1,312 feet, but also 500 kilometers or 310 miles away from the sea coast. And even if we check the shoreline of Mauritania as it was thousands of years ago, it is still hundreds of kilometers away and still hundreds of meters too high. Antarctica. Authors Rand and Rose Flamm Oth proposed in their book When the Sky Fell that the city of Atlantis was in Antarctica. Under this theory, all continents and oceans shifted as one, causing the ancient South Pole to be over the ocean, liberating a considerable portion of Antarctica from its current ice sheet, yielding ideal conditions for human habitation. However, it is questionable that such widespread ecological catastrophe in the form of an extreme geologic process could occur in such a short time period and leave relatively little evidence. Many other exotic claims have been made relating to Antarctica, including that it was a UFO base and that a refuge for Hitler had been built there in an area that was known as Neuschwabenland. Michael Salle, PhD, founder of Exopolitik Institute, suggests that the remnants of Atlantis could be found in the South Pole, i.e. Antarctica. It was a civilization that was founded by aliens from another planet, and after pole shift it is buried under ice sheet where the South Pole currently is. Bill Burns, author of UFOs and the White House, argues that there is more about Antarctica that has been covered up than we think. He believes that there is an entire civilization in Antarctica. He also believes that the world government working with aliens are covering buried artifacts, buildings, etc. Both Michael Salle and Bill Burns believe that the civilization still exists and still operates today. Dear fellow truth seekers, as you can see, so far none of these proposed locations really fit the description of Atlantis made by Plato, without adjustment. In my next video I will continue sharing other locations that have been proposed as the location of Atlantis, and we will see whether any of these locations fit with the description made by Plato or not. I have my own theory whether Atlantis really existed and its connection to the overall prehistory of humanity, but I cannot share it yet. I will do it when it is time to do so, after sharing all the information needed to draw a conclusion. Right now, I'm just sharing all the information that I can gather on this topic. At the meantime, allow me to thank you for watching and hope to see you in my next video.